Hello everyone. Welcome to realistquill. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching now? Clara knelt beside her daughter's bed, the familiar weight of the old storybook in her trembling hands. It had been in her family for generations. Leather bound with faded gold lettering that spelled "Sleep Sweet, Little One." Across its worn cover, "Mommy, will you read me the Mermaid story again?" Sophie's eyes were bright despite the late hour, her small body practically vibrating with anticipation. Clara hesitated. The doctor had warned about encouraging Sophie's obsession with the book, especially after what happened at the lake last month. Sophie wading deeper and deeper, claiming she heard singing from below until a passing jogger pulled her from the water. "Just one story, sweetie. Then sleep." As Clara opened to the dog-eared page, she noticed something strange. Droplets of water beading on the paper despite the bone-dry room. The illustrations seemed different. The mermaid's once gentle smile now revealed rows of needle-like teeth, her eyes hollow black pools that hadn't been there before. Sophie leaned forward eagerly. "She's getting clearer now," she whispered, just like she said she would. Clara's blood ran cold. "Who said that, Sophie?" "The lady who sings to me at night. She says soon I won't need the book anymore because she's almost here." Sophie touched the page, her finger tracing the mermaid's face. "See how the ink moves, Mommy." The illustration was indeed shifting beneath Sophie's touch, the mermaid's hand reaching upward from the page. "She says there are more of us, children who can hear her. We're going to help her come through." Clara slammed the book shut, her heart hammering. That's enough story. That night, Clara locked the book in her bedside drawer. She checked on Sophie 3 times, finding her sleeping peacefully each time. On the 4th check, Sophie's bed was empty. Clara ran through the house, calling her daughter's name, flashlight beam cutting through darkness. When she reached the bathroom, she found water flowing from beneath the closed door. Inside, the bathtub was overflowing, Sophie's small body submerged beneath the surface. But when Clara pulled her daughter up, screaming her name, Sophie's eyes remained closed, a peaceful smile on her blue lips. Water poured not just from the faucet, but from Sophie's mouth, ears and nose. Gallons more than her small body could possibly contain. And in Sophie's tight grip was the storybook, its pages now blank except for a single line of text. 1 down, 26 to go. We're coming through the thin places. As Clara clutched her daughter's cold body, she noticed something on Sophie's neck. Delicate patterns forming beneath the skin, like scales catching light. Somewhere in the house, she heard pages turning. Dr. Eleanor Price had spent 15 years researching her mother's peculiar delusion. The belief that she was not Miranda Price, but Snow White, prisoner of a centuries-old curse. Now standing in her mother's cottage after her funeral, Eleanor felt the familiar cocktail of grief and scientific curiosity. Her mother had lived alone in this isolated forest home for decades, meticulously maintaining 7 garden beds and an absurd collection of antique mirrors. The local villagers indulged her harmless eccentricity, even finding it charming when Miranda insisted on being called Snow. Eleanor sighed as she packed her mother's belongings. The delusion had been remarkably consistent. Miranda claimed she'd escaped the huntsman, lived with 7 protectors who'd turned to stone when she found them, and that the poison apple hadn't killed her but trapped her in an endless cycle of reincarnation while she pursued her through time. In her mother's desk, Eleanor found dozens of journals documenting supposed encounters with her, the queen, the witch, the stealer of beauty. The entries spanned centuries, though the handwriting remained identical. Her mother's commitment to the fantasy was both impressive and heartbreaking. Most disturbing was the glass greenhouse behind the cottage. Inside were 7 life-size statues of men, carved with remarkable detail from what appeared to be darkened glass. Eleanor's mother had placed fresh flowers in their outstretched hands daily. As a psychiatrist, Eleanor recognized elaborate paranoiac construction when she saw it. Still, she couldn't deny the uncomfortable perfection of the statues, too detailed for an amateur, too consistent to be commissioned from different artists. On her third night in the cottage, Eleanor woke to a soft tapping sound. Downstairs, she found nothing amiss until she noticed one of the antique mirrors glinting oddly in the moonlight. Its surface rippled like disturbed water. "You have her face," came a voice from everywhere and nowhere, but not her shine, not yet. Eleanor backed away, heart racing. Sleep deprivation, she told herself. Grief-induced hallucination. The next morning, she found a perfect red apple on the kitchen table that hadn't been there before. When she cut into it, each slice revealed a tiny mirror at its core. That evening, Eleanor noticed one of the glass statues in the greenhouse had moved just slightly. Its head now turned toward the cottage. By midnight, all 7 statues were facing the house. In her mother's final journal, Eleanor found a note addressed to her. "When you see them move, run. Don't look in the mirrors. She uses them to cross over. I've held her back for this lifetime, but when I'm gone, she'll come for you next. You're the last." Eleanor packed her bags, determined to leave this place of grief and madness behind. As she reached for her car keys, she caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. For just a moment, her face wasn't her own, but that of a beautiful woman with cruel eyes and a hungry smile. "There you are," her reflection whispered, reaching a hand toward the glass surface. "I've waited so long for this moment." Eleanor ran for the door, but found only smooth wall where it had been. All exits were gone. Behind her, she heard glass breaking, not shattering, but cracking open like eggs. From the greenhouse came heavy footsteps, deliberate and slow. 7 pairs of glass feet crossing the garden. 7 protectors, awakening too late. In every mirror in the house, her mother's face appeared, mouth open in a silent scream. Harper Chen hadn't believed in fairy tales since age 8, when her grandmother first taught her to sew. "Stories are just patterns," grandmother had said, guiding Harper's small hands with gnarled fingers, like stitches. "You can always unpick them if you don't like how they're turning out." Now 26, Harper found herself unpicking her own life after being laid off from her fashion design job. She returned to her grandmother's remote cottage to regroup, bringing only her essential sewing supplies and the antique spinning wheel she'd inherited. More decoration than tool, as nobody spun thread anymore. The cottage remained exactly as grandmother had left it. Walls lined with spools of thread in impossible colors, half-finished garments draped over every surface, and a locked door in the hallway that had always been forbidden. On her third night back, Harper woke to the sound of the spinning wheel creaking. Downstairs in the moonlit sitting room, she found it motionless, but a spool of golden thread had appeared beside it, shimmering with a metallic luster no commercial process could achieve. Harper's designer instincts overwhelmed her unease. The thread was perfect, fine as silk but strong as wire. By morning, she'd used it to embroider a complex pattern on a jacket lapel, pricking her finger several times in the process. Where her blood touched the thread, the golden color deepened to an almost liquid glow. That night, a voice woke her, rasping and ancient, emanating from behind the locked door. "The pattern begins." The debt renewed. Harper dismissed it as a dream until she noticed the embroidery had changed overnight, the pattern shifting into tiny words repeated across the fabric. A name for a name, a life for a life. Increasingly disturbed but unable to resist the perfect thread, Harper continued sewing. Each morning, more golden spools appeared beside the spinning wheel. Each night, the voice grew closer, no longer confined behind the locked door, but whispering from various corners of the cottage. After a week, Harper's designs began attracting attention online. A boutique offered to feature her gold work collection. A fashion influencer commissioned a custom piece. Success was suddenly within reach, but Harper's body was changing. Her fingertips had turned numb and golden-hued where she'd pricked them. Her hair grew coarse and straw-like. Most disturbing were the dreams, memories that weren't hers, of a desperate young woman, promising her firstborn child to a strange creature in exchange for spinning straw into gold. In grandmother's sewing room, Harper found journals documenting generations of Chen women, all gifted designers, all making the same bargain: success in exchange for continuing the work. The final entry was in her grandmother's handwriting. "I've bought you time, Harper. Named the creature to break my contract, but they always find the next in our bloodline. If you've returned to the cottage, you've already begun spinning your own deal." That night, Harper confronted the voice. "Show yourself. Tell me what you want." From the shadows stepped a figure both ancient and ageless, its fingers elongated like golden needles. "Just what your grandmother promised. A child of your line to spin the gold, to weave the spaces between worlds a little thinner each generation." It gestured around the cottage. "Look closely at what you thought were designs." Harper saw it then. Every pattern her grandmother had created. Every design Harper herself had embroidered with the golden thread. They were elaborate sigils, symbols that made her eyes hurt and mind switch. 20 generations of Chen women, the creature said, each adding their thread to the greater work. "The thinning is nearly complete." Harper ran to the locked door, breaking it open with a desperate kick. Inside was no room but a swirling golden void, punctuated with countless human faces trapped mid-screen, their features slowly transforming into glimmering thread. At the center of the void floated the true spinning wheel, massive and ancient, turning worlds like fiber into a gleaming bridge between dimensions. Harper felt her fingers extending, hardening, becoming tools of the trade she'd never fully understood. The creature smiled with too many teeth. "Welcome to the family business." Wildlife biologist Scarlett Red Mercer returned to Grimm County to investigate the wolf resurgence in the forest surrounding her childhood home. The decimated wolf population had mysteriously rebounded, with reports of abnormally large specimens displaying unusual behaviors, following hikers, surrounding cabins at night, and leaving complex patterns of paw prints that almost resembled written symbols. Red's grandmother still lived on the edge of these woods in the same cottage where she'd raised Red after her parents' disappearance 20 years ago. Ruled a hiking accident, though their bodies were never found. The wolves were always here, grandmother said when Red arrived, her eyes constantly darting to the tree line visible through the kitchen window. They just hid themselves better before. That night, Red unpacked her research equipment while grandmother prepared her old bedroom, still decorated with the red hooded jacket she'd worn everywhere as a child. "I kept it for you," grandmother said, stroking the fabric with trembling fingers. "You'll need it again." "I outgrew fairy tales a long time ago," Red replied, but accepted the jacket to humor the old woman. Her first week of field research yielded disturbing findings. The wolves weren't just larger than normal. Their anatomical structure showed impossible adaptation. Jawbones that appeared to be evolving towards supporting human-style vocalization. Paw pads developing dermal ridges like primitive fingerprints. More unsettling were the dreams that began her third night. Vivid memories of running through the forest on all fours, seeing through eyes that perceived heat signatures, pursuing prey that screamed with human voices. Red began finding dirt and leaves in her bed each morning, though she had no memory of going outside. Twice she woke with raw knuckles and bark embedded under her fingernails. "You're remembering," grandmother said, examining Red's hands without surprise. "It happens to all the women in our family eventually." From her bedroom dresser, grandmother retrieved a leather-bound journal filled with accounts spanning centuries, all from women in their family line, all documenting the same transformation. "The woods marked us long ago," grandmother explained. "We made a pact with what loves between the trees. Protection for service." "Service to what?" Red demanded. "To the thinning. Every generation, one of us opens the way a little wide." Grandmother's smile revealed canines slightly too sharp for human dentition. "Your mother refused her role. That's why they took her." That night, during the full moon, Red followed grandmother into the forest despite her mounting fear. In a clearing, they found dozens of wolves arranged in concentric circles around a moonlit pool, oddly still, unbreathing but clearly alive. like statues with gleaming eyes. At the pool's center stood a wolf larger than any Red had ever seen, its fur white as bone, eyes glowing with cold intelligence. As it approached, walking on its hind legs with unnatural ease, Red recognized its face. "Mom?" she whispered. The creature's muzzle stretched in what might have been a smile. When it spoke, the voice was both her mother's and something far older. "Not anymore. Just as you won't be Red much longer." Grandmother removed her own clothing and stepped into the pool, her body contorting and shifting until another wolf stood in her place, gray-muzzled but powerful. "Every 20 years, the pool thins the barrier," the white wolf explained. "Tonight, you'll complete what your mother began. With 3 generations present, the way opens fully." Red backed away but found wolves behind her, nudging her toward the water with surprising gentleness. "You don't understand," she protested. "I'm a scientist. I study wolves. I don't. Why do you think you were drawn to them?" Her mother wolf asked. "Why do you think the dreams feel like memory?" The moment Red's foot touched the pool, images flooded her mind. Centuries of her ancestors running with the pack, serving as interpreters between worlds, helping the forest prepare for what waited on the other side of the thinning barrier. As the transformation began, bones cracking and reshaping, Red understood finally why Grandmother had kept the red hood all these years, not as a reminder of humanity, but as the last thing she would ever need to share. Journalist Daniel Bell specialized in debunking internet mysteries and urban legends. When sent to investigate the Briar Rose phenomenon, multiple cases of young women falling into unexplained comas near abandoned Richardson Towers, he approached the assignment with his usual skepticism. Richardson Towers had been meant to revolutionize urban living in the 1970s, a gleaming glass skyscraper surrounded by an elaborate rose garden. Construction halted abruptly when the architect Eleanor Richardson disappeared after claiming something was watching from behind the glass. The half-finished building remained unoccupied, becoming an urban explorer's dream and the subject of countless rumors. Of the 11 coma cases over the past decade, all were women aged 16 to 25. All had visited the tower before their collapse. All showed the same unusual brain activity, rapid eye movement indicating intense dreams despite being unresponsive to external stimuli. The latest victim was Talia Green, a 19-year-old art student who'd gone to sketch the infamous Rose Garden. Now she lay in county hospital, monitored by bewildered doctors and her increasingly desperate parents. "She whispers, sometimes," Mrs. Green told Daniel during their interview. "Just one sentence, over and over. It's still climbing the tower." At Richardson Towers, Daniel photographed the overgrown rose garden, noting the unusual patterns in which the briars had grown, not random but in perfect concentric circles around the building, densest at the ground floor, and thinning near the upper stories as if purposely climbing toward the unfinished penthouse. Breaking in through a service entrance, Daniel was struck by how intact the interior remained. No graffiti, no evidence of squatters, not even significant dust. Almost as if someone maintained it. On the 13th floor, he found an architectural anomaly, a room marked sleep chamber on the blueprints, but absent from the official plans filed with the city. Inside was a single antique spinning wheel, incongruous among the modern steel and glass. Daniel pricked his finger on its spindle before he could stop himself, a bead of blood welling up instantly. That night in his hotel room, Daniel dreamed he was trapped inside the tower, looking out through the glass at 11 women standing in the rose garden, their eyes closed, bodies swaying slightly as rose briars slowly encircled their ankles, knees. He woke to find his hotel room filled with roses budding from the carpet, walls, even erupting from his skin where minor scratches had been. Increasingly obsessed, Daniel discovered that Eleanor Richardson had left behind journals theorizing that certain buildings could serve as architectural tuning forks, structures that, when properly designed, could vibrate at frequencies that thinned the barriers between dimensions. The spinning wheel was the tuning instrument, the roses the amplifiers, the sleeping women the power source. Daniel returned to visit Talia, bringing a rose he'd taken from the tower as an impulse. When placed in her hand, her eyes flew open, but what looked out wasn't Talia. "The sleepers are the anchors," she said in a voice like grinding glass. 11 awake, one still dreaming, then the 13th to open the door. Daniel's research revealed a pattern. Coma cases clustered in 13-year cycles. This was year 12. The building had 13 floors. According to Richardson's theories, the 13th activation would make the thinning permanent. That night, the roses growing from Daniel's skin bloomed fully, releasing pollen that induced an immediate, overwhelming drowsiness. As he fought to stay awake, he saw the hotel room walls becoming transparent, revealing something vast and patient watching from the other side of reality. His last conscious action was sending his research to his editor with a warning: break the glass, wake the sleeper. The 13th dreamer completes the key. When Daniel didn't appear for scheduled interviews, police found his hotel room empty except for rose petals and a tape recorder capturing his final moments. His voice changing mid-sentence from panic to serene acceptance. "It's coming through the... Oh, I see now. It's beautiful on the other side. The tower was never meant to keep something out. It was always a ladder for us to climb over." At County Hospital, Talia Green suddenly sat up in bed, eyes still closed, and spoke clearly. 12 awake now, one more to go. In her hand was a perfect rose, its petals formed of what appeared to be thin, shimmering glass.
Dr. Midas Reynolds had always been obsessed with transformation. As a leading geneticist, he dedicated his career to cellular regeneration, the science of turning damaged tissue into healthy flesh. His colleagues called him brilliant. His investors called him the future of medicine. His 8-year-old daughter, Lily, simply called him Daddy on the rare occasions she saw him. "Just a little longer, honey," he'd tell her during their weekly video calls, his perpetually gloved hands adjusting the camera. "Daddy's work is going to change everything." From her hospital bed, Lily would smile weakly, her small body failing despite the best treatments money could buy. A rare degenerative disorder was slowly turning her tissues rigid, calcifying her from the inside out. Conventional medicine had given her months. Midas had given himself exactly that long to find the cure. In his private laboratory, funded by military interests, he deliberately avoided examining too closely. Midas finally achieved his breakthrough. A compound that could rewrite cellular instructions at the quantum level, transforming organic material into any programmed pattern. The military wanted weapons applications. Midas wanted his daughter whole again. On the night he completed the formula, he tested it on a lab mouse with similar calcification patterns to Lily's condition. The change was immediate and astonishing. Rigid tissues becoming supple, dead cells regenerating. But something unexpected happened as well. The mouse's fur began to shimmer with a metallic gleam, its eyes reflecting light like polished coins. Midas didn't care about side effects. His daughter had 3 weeks left at most. He smuggled the formula out of the lab, telling himself he'd document everything properly after Lily was saved. At her hospital room, he dismissed the night nurse with his authority as both doctor and the hospital's primary benefactor. "This might feel strange, sweetheart," he told Lily as he prepared the injection, "but Daddy's going to make everything better." Lily trusted him completely, not flinching even as the golden-hued liquid entered her veins. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Lily gasped, her back arching as golden light spread visibly beneath her skin, racing along her circulatory system. Her eyes widened, then began to glow with the same metallic sheen he'd observed in the test subject. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice distorted as if speaking through liquid. "It's so cold." Then she screamed, a sound of such primal agony that Midas lunged forward, gathering her into his arms. The moment his bare hand touched her skin, he felt a strange tingling sensation. Looking down, he watched in horror as golden light transferred from Lily to the point of contact, racing up his own arm. Every cell touched by the light transformed instantly, not into healthy tissue but into pure solid gold. The transformation spread like a wave, faster than he could comprehend. Lily's small body turned rigid in his arms, her expression of pain eternally preserved in gleaming metal. The conversion continued outward from his touch, consuming her entire. Midas screamed for help, staggering back from the bed. But the transformation had already begun in his own body where he'd touched her. Golden light spread beneath his skin, despite his desperate attempts to halt its progress. Security footage later recovered showed Dr. Reynolds removing his phone with his one remaining human hand, making a final call to his research assistant. Burn everything. The formula's wrong. It doesn't transform, it transmutes. And the process doesn't stop at the initial subject. By the time security reached the room, they found a tableau of horror, two golden figures frozen in a moment of terrible understanding. Midas kneeling beside the bed, one arm outstretched toward his daughter, his face a mask of eternal regret. The senior officer who entered first made the mistake of touching Dr. Reynolds' golden shoulder. By morning, 17 hospital staff had been transformed, the golden conversion spreading through the facility like a contagion. When the military containment team finally incinerated the hospital, they reported success in eliminating all traces of Project Midas. They were wrong. In the ashes, investigators found no remains of gold figures, just scorch marks where they had stood. Thermal imaging revealed tunnels beneath the hospital foundation, tunnels that shouldn't have existed, their walls lined with a strange golden residue that seemed to pulse with faint light. Deep underground, something moves through the darkness now, fluid yet metal, alive yet transformed. Something that was once a father and daughter and 17 others. Their consciousnesses merged into a single golden entity, burrowing ever downward toward the Earth's molten core, seeking heat enough to reshape what they've become into something new, something that can reach through to other places where transformation is possible. In research facilities worldwide, metal detectors now inexplicably register brief, intense readings from solid stone walls. Security footage captures momentary glimpses of reflective surfaces rippling like water. And children with terminal illnesses sometimes whisper to their nurses about the golden girl who visits their dreams, promising a touch that will make them special, make them shine forever. Marine biologist Cordelia Waters had spent a decade studying abnormal whale song patterns when the Navy approached her with a classified recording. The audio file contained vocalizations unlike any known marine species complex, haunting phrases that linguistic analysis suggested contained mathematical structures consistent with language. "We need to know what's communicating down there," Admiral Keegan told her, "and whether it poses a threat." The recording had been captured at extreme depth in a remote sector of the North Atlantic, a location Cordelia recognized immediately. Decades earlier, her grandmother, famous ocean explorer Lorelei Waters, had disappeared in those same coordinates while investigating what she'd called the Phantom Chorus. Cordelia's subsequent research uncovered multiple disappearances in the region dating back centuries, often preceded by reports of sailors hearing beautiful singing. The parallels to mermaid legends were obvious, but Cordelia was a scientist, not a folklorist. Still, she kept her grandmother's journal close as she boarded the research vessel, Hermes. Inside were Lorelei's final entries, including one that had always disturbed Cordelia. The songs aren't coming from the ocean, they're coming from beneath it, where something waits for a voice strong enough to answer. The expedition was officially oceanographic research, but the presence of naval personnel and advanced sonar equipment revealed its true purpose. For 2 weeks, they tracked intermittent signals without visual confirmation of their source. Then came the storm, sudden and catastrophic. As violent waves battered the Hermes, equipment began malfunctioning. The ship's radio emitted only strange, melodic static. GPS systems showed impossible coordinates. Cordelia was alone in the lab when the singing began. Beautiful beyond comprehension, seeming to emanate not from the speakers but inside her own mind. Granddaughter of Lorelei. The voices sang in perfect unison. The bloodline returns. Through the lab window, Cordelia saw impossible shapes moving beneath the churning surface, not fish or marine mammals, but something that shifted between forms, trailing bioluminescence like liquid stars. That night, Cordelia dreamed of her grandmother, not as she remembered her, but transformed. Lorelei's lower body was no longer human but composed of shifting translucent tissue. Most disturbing were her eyes, black and vast as the deep ocean itself. "I didn't disappear," Dream Lorelei explained. "I transcended. The song is an invitation to those with the right genetic resonance. Our family has always heard what others cannot." The voices at the threshold. Cordelia woke gasping, her throat raw as if from screaming or singing. In the mirror, she found subtle changes, her eyes reflecting light differently. Fine scales barely visible at her hairline, gill-like structures forming behind her ears. The ship's doctor dismissed her concerns, suggesting stress-induced hallucinations. But over the following days, more crew members reported dreams of underwater cities and voices calling their names. Several developed physical anomalies similar to Cordelia's. Most disturbing was Lieutenant Chen, who began singing constantly in a language none of them recognized. When forcibly silenced, his skin would blister and crack, revealing not blood but clear, viscous fluid. On the 7th night, Cordelia woke to find herself on the deck, surrounded by half the crew, all glassy-eyed, all transformed to varying degrees, all singing in perfect harmony with voices that carried impossible distances across the water. Admiral Keegan and the remaining unaffected crew barricaded themselves in the bridge, maintaining desperate radio contact with Naval Command. Their final transmission described Cordelia and the others diving overboard, their bodies changing as they hit the water, limbs fusing, skin becoming translucent. The Hermes was found drifting 3 days later, its remaining crew members catatonic, repeating one phrase, "The threshold thins where water meets sky." Cordelia's research was classified, her disappearance officially attributed to the storm. But 6 months later, coastal communities worldwide began reporting the same phenomenon. Beautiful singing heard at night, usually preceding fishing vessels found empty or community members gone missing. Most disturbing are the recordings that occasionally interrupt maritime radio transmissions. Cordelia's voice, accompanied by others in perfect harmony, singing words that linguistic experts now confirm contain embedded coordinate locations of underwater fault lines where the Earth's crust is thinnest, where something ancient is helping its new voices prepare the way. Eli James had been the top recovery agent at Grimm Securities for 5 years, specializing in retrieving stolen technology. His clients were corporations willing to pay substantially for discretion and results without involving authorities. His latest assignment came directly from Grimm's founder, recovering an experimental prototype called Lamplight from physicist Dr. Yasmin Al-Harbi, who had vanished from a research facility with her creation. "We represent the developer," Grimm told him. "This technology in the wrong hands could be catastrophic. Find her, secure Lamplight, use whatever means necessary." Eli's investigation led him to an isolated cabin in the Oregon wilderness. Inside, he found research notes describing what appeared to be impossible technology, a device that manipulated probability fields to effectively grant wishes by collapsing quantum possibilities into the user's desired outcome. Al-Harbi had documented increasingly erratic results during testing. Early successes healing injuries, solving complex equations instantly, gave way to disturbing side effects. Test subjects reported intrusive thoughts and sensations of being watched. Several developed identical nightmares about a presence demanding exchange. Most concerning was Al-Harbi's final entry. "It doesn't create outcomes, it negotiates them with something on the other side. Every wish opens the door wider." Eli found Lamplight in the cabin's basement, a surprisingly small device resembling an antique oil lamp made of modern materials. Its surface was inscribed with complex mathematical formulas and warning symbols. As he secured it in his containment case, Eli heard a soft voice from behind him. "You can't take it back to them." Dr. Al-Harbi stood in the doorway, though stood wasn't quite right. She seemed to flicker between positions, her movements stuttering like damaged film. More disturbing were her eyes. They reflected light that wasn't present in the room. "I tried to destroy it," she said, her voice overlapping with itself in echoes. "It won't let me. Now I'm becoming its door." She approached with unnatural speed, hands grasping Eli's shoulders. "Look what's happened to me. I wish to understand how it worked." Up close, Eli saw her skin wasn't solid. Microscopic gaps revealed shifting darkness beneath, as if her physical form was becoming porous. "They're using you," she whispered. "Grim isn't recovering it. They're retrieving it for the other side. They've been working toward this for generations." A sudden force threw Eli against the wall. The containment case shattered and lamplight rolled across the floor, its surface beginning to glow.
"It wants to be used," Al-Harbi warned, her form increasingly unstable. "Every wish thins the barrier." "Don't." She collapsed mid-sentence, her body shimmering like heat distortion before rearranging into something no longer entirely human. Still recognizable as Al-Harbi, but with proportions and angles that hurt to look at directly. Injured and terrified, Eli instinctively grabbed lamplight as he fled the cabin. In his car, speeding down mountain roads, he examined the device more carefully. It was warm to the touch, vibrating subtly as if anticipating use. Eli called Grim, reporting Al-Harbi's condition and her accusation. "She's suffering mental deterioration from exposure to the technology," Grim replied smoothly. "The prototype affects neurological function with prolonged contact. Bring it in immediately." As Eli drove through the night, his injuries from the cabin began causing increasing pain. A particularly sharp turn sent him into a guardrail, further injuring his arm and disabling his vehicle. Stranded on a deserted road with his phone showing no signal, bleeding and in agony, Eli found himself staring at lamplight on the passenger seat. Just one small wish, he thought, just to stop the pain until help arrives. The moment he touched the device with intent, it grew warm, its surface illuminating with soft blue light. Relief flooded his system instantly, the pain vanishing. But something else arrived with it, a presence in his mind, ancient and patient, its thoughts alien yet suddenly accessible. Memories that weren't his flooded Eli's consciousness. Countless exchanges over centuries, wishes granted through various vessels, each opening the barrier slightly wider. He saw Grim Securities for what it truly was. Not a company, but a cult spanning generations, dedicated to thinning the veil between worlds. What waited on the other side had no name in human language, only an endless hunger for possibility itself. As realization dawned, Eli felt his body changing, becoming like Al-Harbi's, a doorway rather than a person. Through his increasingly permeable skin, he felt cold air from somewhere that wasn't Earth flowing in. His last coherent action was sending coordinates to his only trusted contact at the agency, before Lamplight's blue glow enveloped him completely. When authorities finally located the vehicle based on an anonymous tip, they found it empty except for a stray lamplight device, and a disturbing pattern burned into the driver's seat. A perfect silhouette of a human form, surrounded by what forensic analysts could only describe as multiple overlapping handprints, reaching inward from the edges. Grim Securities denied any connection to the case. Their founder could not be reached for comment. His home found empty except for hundreds of antique oil lamps arranged in concentric circles. In the months that followed, wish-granting services began appearing on the darknet, offering probability manipulation for the right price. Users report 100% success rates, followed by increasingly disturbing physical changes, and the compulsion to offer the same service to others. Each transaction completed with the same confirmation message. The exchange is accepted. The door opens wide. Landscape architect Rose Thorn specialized in restoring historic gardens when she received the commission of a lifetime revitalizing the infamous Briar Estate Gardens. Abandoned for nearly a century after the family's mysterious disappearance, local legend claimed the original garden designer had created a sleeping spell in the landscaping itself through sacred geometry and rare plant selections.
Supposedly, anyone who spent too long among the briars would fall into endless slumber. Rose dismissed such stories as provincial superstition. Her preliminary survey revealed sophisticated design principles far ahead of their time. Concentric planting zones, golden ratio implementations, and curious sightlines that created different visual experiences depending on the viewer's height and position. Most intriguing was the central feature, a perfect circle of unusual thorn bushes surrounding a stone dais. Historical records showed the original plants had been imported from an undocumented source, described only as the edgelands where worlds grow thin. Rose's restoration team cleared decades of overgrowth. Following the original blueprint preserved in the estate archives, she noticed her workers becoming increasingly lethargic as the project progressed, often finding them taking unauthorized breaks, leaning against trees with vacant expression. "The air's too sweet here," her foreman complained. "Makes my thoughts slow down." Rose experienced it herself, a pleasant heaviness that made her workdays feel dreamlike. She began having vivid dreams of walking through the completed garden, guided by a figure whose features she could never quite see. "You're doing beautifully," the figure would tell her. "Just a few more elements and the pattern will be complete." In her waking hours, Rose found herself making intuitive adjustments to the original plans. Subtle changes that felt necessary, though she couldn't articulate why. Plants thrived unnaturally quickly under her care, especially the central briar circle, which grew inches daily once replanted. 6 weeks into the project, Rose's assistant discovered a hidden compartment in the estate library containing the journal of Lady Eleanor Briar, the estate's last resident. The final entries documented bizarre occurrences as the garden neared completion in 1924. The workers sleep longer each day. Philip hasn't woken in 30 hours. When roused, they speak of the same figure walking their dreams, promising rest if they complete the garden. "Something waits at the threshold and I fear we've built it a doorway." That night, Rose dreamed more vividly than ever, walking through the garden at midnight as all the plants reached toward her with strange purpose. In the central circle, the briars parted to reveal not the stone dais but a shadowed passage descending into earth that didn't feel like earth. The familiar figure waited at the entrance. "Almost ready now," it said, its voice like rustling leaves. "The briars grow at both sides of the threshold. Soon they'll meet in the middle." Rose woke in the garden with no memory of leaving her cottage, barefoot and standing before the briar circle. Dawn light revealed something alarming. The stone dais had developed hairline cracks overnight, dark soil pushing through from below. Increasingly disturbed, Rose ordered ground-penetrating radar surveys of the central garden. The results showed no solid earth beneath the dais for at least 100 feet, just an empty chamber that shouldn't have been structurally possible. When she attempted to suspend restoration work, Rose found her team unresponsive to her concerns. They continued working with mechanical precision, eyes glazed, speaking only to confirm they were preparing for the awakening. In Eleanor Briar's journal, Rose found a loose page apparently torn from an even older text. "The garden is the inverse of a sleeping spell. It does not cause slumber. It serves as an alarm clock for what has been sleeping for millennia beneath. When the pattern is complete, it will wake and reach through the thinned barrier." The final entry was a desperate warning. "I've destroyed the central plants and scattered the family. If anyone reads this, do not restore the garden. What sleeps must remain asleep." Rose immediately ordered the briar circle destroyed, but overnight it had quadrupled in density, the thorns now as long as daggers. 2 workers who attempted to cut through disappeared completely. As midnight approached, Rose made a desperate decision. Using the estate's fuel supplies, she prepared to burn the entire garden to the ground. But as darkness fell, every plant on the grounds began to glow with faint bioluminescence. The light pulsed in synchronized patterns that made Rose's vision swim and her determination waver. From the briar circle came the sound of stone cracking. The dais split open like an eggshell, revealing not darkness but an impossible garden mirroring their own. The same design but composed of plants that moved with deliberate intelligence and blooms that resembled watching eyes. Standing on her side of the threshold, Rose watched her workers walk trance-like toward the opening, faces peaceful as if finally achieving their heart's desire. Behind them stepped the figure from her dreams, now clearly visible. A perfect mirror of Rose herself, but composed entirely of living plant matter. Her smile revealing seed pod teeth. The sleeper wakes, her doppelganger said. You've been dreaming of being human for so long, Rose. Time to remember what you really are. As realization dawned, Rose felt her feet taking root in the soil beneath her, her consciousness expanding into every plant she'd so carefully tended. The garden wasn't awakening something else. It was awakening. The Briar estate remains under government quarantine, satellite imagery showing accelerated plant growth expanding in precise geometric patterns visible only from above. Overhead drones capture footage of humans moving through the encroaching vegetation, their skin gradually transitioning to bark and leaf, tending the ever-growing garden that now covers 3 counties. At the center, where the stone dais once stood, 2 identical figures can occasionally be glimpsed. One composed of plant matter resembling a woman, the other a woman becoming plant, standing on opposite sides of a threshold that grows thinner by the day.
Child psychologist, Dr. Nina Hansel, specialized in treating survivors of trauma when 7-year-old Greta Klein was referred to her practice. Greta hadn't spoken since being found wandering along a rural highway 3 days after her parents' mysterious disappearance from their remote woodland cottage. Police discovered unusual conditions in the Klein home. Windows nailed shut from the inside, mirrors covered with blankets. And strangest of all, a trail of candy leading from Greta's bedroom into the surrounding forest. During their first sessions, Greta communicated only through drawings. Endless variations of a tall, rail-thin figure with elongated limbs and a wide smile full of too many teeth. She labeled these pictures the Kinderdresser. Dresser like furniture, or dresser like someone who dresses? Nina asked. Greta held up 2 fingers, then made a chewing motion. After weeks of gentle therapy, Greta finally spoke in a near whisper. It gets inside your house by learning your name. It gets inside your skin by learning your heart. Progress was slow but steady. Nina learned that Greta's parents had discovered an old handwritten book in the cottage's root cellar shortly after moving in. A book of what they thought were harmless children's stories that they read aloud each night. The stories changed, Greta explained. Every night they were different. Mom and Dad's voices changed too. They started smiling even when they weren't happy. The final night, Greta had awoken to find her parents standing motionless beside her bed, their bodies unnaturally elongated. Skin stretched too tight across altered bone structure. It wasn't them anymore, she whispered. They kept saying I should follow the candy into the woods, that they'd left something sweet for me there. Instead, Greta had hidden in a kitchen cabinet until morning, then fled on foot. Nina requested police retrieve the book from the Klein cottage. They reported back that no such item existed, though they noted an unusual detail. Pantry shelves filled with homemade gingerbread shaped like tiny human figures, each bearing a remarkably detailed face. As treatment progressed, Nina began experiencing unsettling phenomena. The sensation of being watched during sessions, objects in her office, subtly rearranged between appointments, and, most disturbing, finding small candy wrappers in her coat pockets that she hadn't placed there. Greta's drawings evolved to show the Kinderdresser growing progressively closer to a house resembling Nina's own. In the most recent picture, it peered through a window with Nina's face clearly visible inside. You said its name in your sleep, Greta told her, eyes wide with fear. I heard you. That night, Nina dreamed of reading from an ancient book, the words crawling across the page like ants rearranging themselves. She woke to find herself standing in her kitchen, rolling dough for gingerbread she didn't remember preparing. Increasingly concerned, Nina consulted folklore specialists about the Kinderdresser. Professor Emil Braun identified parallels to obscure Germanic legends about an entity that targeted children after being invited into homes through storytelling. The earliest versions describe it as something that wears human skin like clothing, Braun explained. Hence the name.
dresser of children. It prepares the children by feeding them sweets that make their skin pliable. Nina installed security cameras in her home. The footage showed her sleepwalking nightly, performing the same disturbing routine, placing candy in trails leading from her doors and windows to the center of each room. Most alarming was a figure briefly visible at her bedroom window each night, impossibly tall and thin, its proportions defying human anatomy. During their next session, Greta became hysterical upon seeing Nina. "It's starting to wear you," she screamed, pointing at Nina's reflection in the office window. "Your smile is wrong." Nina couldn't see any difference, but later colleagues commented on her unexplained weight loss and unusually wide smile. That evening, Nina found a small, handwritten book on her coffee table that she didn't recognize. The leather cover bore no title, but opening to the first page revealed an illustration of a smiling figure leading children into dark wood. The text began, "To know its name is to open the first door. To speak its name is to unlock the second. To feed it is to surrender the key to your skin." Though she knew better, Nina felt an overwhelming compulsion to read aloud. The words seemed to shift as she spoke them, her voice gradually altering until she no longer recognized it as her own. Nina canceled her appointments the next morning, driving instead to the Klein cottage against police advisement. The forest surrounding the property seemed wrong somehow. Trees spaced too evenly, their branches forming deliberate patterns overhead. Inside the abandoned house, she found the kitchen counters lined with fresh gingerbread figures, dozens of them, each bearing a different child's face, rendered in frightening detail. Some she recognized as past patients. Most disturbing was a half-completed figure with Greta's features, the dough still soft and pliable. The cellar door stood open, steps descending into darkness that felt hungry. From below came the sound of something large moving with deliberate patience, and the sweet smell of baking sugar. Nina texted her location to Professor Braun with a desperate warning before descending the stairs, drawn by a compulsion she couldn't resist. Authorities found the cottage empty when they arrived, though the oven was still warm. Inside was a single piece of gingerbread shaped like a woman, its face a perfect rendering of Nina Hansel, details so precise that investigators could make out her horrified expression. Child Protective Services moved Greta to a new foster home the same day. Her new family reported she seemed to be adjusting well, though she insisted on checking under her bed each night for candy wrappers. 3 weeks later, Greta's foster parents discovered a small, handwritten book they didn't recognize on their daughter's nightstand. When asked about it, Greta smiled a smile too wide for her face, and asked if they would read her a bedtime story. She was particularly hungry for something sweet, she explained, something that would help her grow into her new skin.